The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty street. Zektar moved through the ruins of what humans once called downtown. His massive form stepped over broken glass and twisted metal. The alien warrior stood 8 feet tall. His dark purple skin looked like armor. 4 arms hung at his sides. Each hand could crush a human skull without effort. The invasion had been swift. Earth's military crumbled in 3 days. The Galactic Empire's ships blocked out the sky. Their weapons turned cities to ash. Most humans fled underground or died fighting. The few survivors hid like rats in the wreckage of their world. Zektar's people were born for war. They conquered 100 worlds before Earth. Each planet fell the same way. First came fear. Then came surrender. Finally came submission. It always worked. It had to work. His plasma rifle hummed with power. The weapon could melt through steel. It had killed dozens of humans already. Their weak bodies offered no challenge. They ran and screamed and begged. Just like every other species the Empire conquered. A sound made him stop. Footsteps. Slow and steady. Someone walked toward him down the street. Zektar raised his weapon. His 4 eyes scanned the shadows between the broken buildings. The figure stepped into view. It was human. Male. Maybe 30 years old. He wore torn clothes and had dirt on his face. But he walked like he owned the street. His shoulders were straight. His head was high. He looked directly at Zektar without fear. This confused the warrior. Humans always ran when they saw him. They screamed or cried or tried to hide. This one just walked forward. His face showed no terror, no panic, just calm determination. Zektar tightened his grip on the rifle. The weapon's targeting system locked onto the human's chest. One shot would end this strange encounter. One shot would restore the natural order of things. But something made him wait. The human kept walking. His steps never faltered. His eyes never left Zektar's face. Those eyes held something the warrior had never seen before in the humans he killed. They held strength. The man stopped 20 feet away, close enough that Zektar could see the sweat on his forehead, close enough to smell his fear. But the human showed no sign of backing down. He stood there like a mountain, solid and unmoving. "You're going to kill me," the human said. His voice was steady, matter of fact, like he was commenting on the weather. Zektar's translator device turned the words into his own language. The human spoke truth. Death was coming. The rifle was aimed. The warrior's finger rested on the trigger. All that remained was to fire. "Yes," Zektar replied. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You will die like the others." The human nodded. "I know. But first, can I ask you something?" This was wrong. Prey did not ask questions. Prey ran or died. They did not stand and talk. They did not look their killer in the eyes and make requests. Zektar felt confused. His training had not prepared him for this. "Speak quickly," he growled. "What's your name?" The question hit like a physical blow. No human had ever asked his name. In 5 years of war across the galaxy, no enemy had cared who he was. They saw only death coming for them. They saw only the weapon and the uniform and the cruel purpose. None had ever wondered about the being behind the gun. "I am Zektar," he said. The words felt strange in his mouth. When had he last spoken his own name to an enemy? "I'm David," the human replied. "David Chen. I used to teach children before your people came. Math and science mostly. Some history too." Zektar's weapon wavered slightly. This made no sense. Why was the human telling him this? Why did it matter what job he once had? Dead prey did not need occupations or histories. "I don't care what you were," Zektar said. But even as he spoke, he realized it wasn't true. Something about the human's calm words had caught his attention. A teacher, someone who guided young minds, someone who built rather than destroyed. David smiled. It was not a happy smile, more sad than anything else. "No, I suppose you don't. But I wanted you to know anyway. I wanted you to know that I had a life before this moment, that I mattered to people." "You are nothing," Zektar snarled. But his voice lacked its usual conviction. "Your species is weak. You exist only to serve the Empire now." "Maybe," David agreed. "But we existed long before your empire was born. We built cities and wrote songs and loved our families. We dreamed of reaching the stars peacefully. We hoped to find friends out there." The warrior's forearms tensed. His people had learned to avoid thinking about such things. The Empire taught that conquest was natural, that the strong ruled the weak, that mercy was weakness, and compassion was folly. To consider the dreams of prey was dangerous thinking. "Your dreams died with your world," Zektar said. "Now kneel and accept your fate." But David did not kneel. He stood straighter instead. "You know what I think, Zektar? I think you're tired." The alien's eyes widened. "What?" "I think you've killed so many people that you've forgotten what it feels like to have someone see you as more than just a weapon. When was the last time someone asked your name? When did someone last care about who you were before you became a killer?" Zektar's rifle began to shake. The human's words cut deeper than any blade. They reached places in his mind that had been locked away for years. Memories of home, of family, of a time before the endless wars and the mountains of corpses. "Be silent," he commanded. But his voice cracked slightly. David took a step closer. Not running toward safety, but toward danger, toward the being who would kill him. "You don't have to do this. You could walk away. Let me live. Choose mercy for once instead of death." "I cannot," Zektar whispered. The admission felt like defeat. "The Empire commands it. My orders are clear." "The Empire isn't here right now," David said softly. "It's just you and me on this empty street. Just two people talking. You could choose to be Zektar instead of just another soldier." The weapon trembled in the warrior's hands. His finger hovered over the trigger. One squeeze would end the conversation. One shot would silence the human's disturbing questions. One death would restore the simple clarity of his purpose. But something had changed. The moment stretched between them like a bridge. On one side stood everything Zektar had been taught: duty and conquest and the glory of the Empire. On the other side stood something else, something he had almost forgotten existed: the possibility of choice. The alien warrior raised his weapon higher. His targeting system locked on. The shot was perfect. The kill was certain. All he had to do was fire. But he didn't. The seconds crawled by like hours. Zektar's finger remained frozen on the trigger. His four eyes stared at the human who refused to run. David Chen stood perfectly still, waiting, not begging or crying or trying to escape, just waiting for death, or mercy with equal calm. Something broke inside the alien warrior, not his body or his weapon, something deeper, something he thought the Empire had destroyed years ago. His conscience stirred like a sleeping giant waking up after a long winter. Slowly, Zektar lowered his rifle. The targeting system's red light faded. The weapon's hum grew quiet. His forearms hung loose at his sides. For the first time in 5 years, he had chosen not to kill when killing was expected. David let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Thank you. Do not thank me yet," Zektar said. His voice sounded different now, less like grinding metal and more like wind through caves. "I may change my mind." But they both knew he wouldn't. Something had shifted between them. The moment of choice had passed. The teacher and the warrior stood in the ruins of a dead city and looked at each other like strangers meeting for the first time. "Why?" Zektar asked. "Why did you not run? Why did you not beg or offer me payment for your life?" David wiped sweat from his forehead. His hands shook slightly now that the danger had passed. "Because running wouldn't have worked. You're faster than me, stronger than me. If you wanted me dead, I'd be dead no matter what I did." "That is logical," the alien agreed. "But most of your kind are not logical when facing death." "Maybe not. But I figured if I was going to die anyway, I might as well try something different. I wanted to see if there was still a person under all that armor and training." Zektar looked down at himself. The black uniform with its red markings, the ceremonial scars on his arms that marked each world he had conquered, the weapons and tools of death that covered his body. When had he stopped being Zektar and become just another Imperial soldier? "What you see is what the Empire made me," he said quietly. "No," David replied. "What I see is someone who chose not to pull the trigger. The Empire didn't make that choice. You did." The words hit harder than any weapon. Zektar had spent so many years following orders that he had forgotten he could refuse them. The idea felt strange and dangerous, like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing he could either fall or fly. "I should kill you," he said. But there was no threat in it anymore, just confusion and fear. "Yes, you should. According to your training and your orders, I should be dead already. But here we are, talking." A sound in the distance made them both turn. Aircraft engines, Imperial patrol ships making their rounds through the conquered city. They would expect to find Zektar completing his mission. They would expect another human corpse to add to the growing pile. "You have to go," Zektar said urgently. "They will be here soon. If they find you alive, they will ask questions I cannot answer." David nodded but didn't move immediately. "What will you tell them?" "That the human escaped before I could fire. That he vanished into the ruins." The lie came easily. Too easily. Zektar realized he had been preparing to deceive his own people from the moment he lowered his weapon. "And if they don't believe you?" Zektar's face hardened. "Then I will face the consequences. Go. Now." But David still hesitated. "Will I see you again?" The question surprised them both. Why would a human want to see his would-be killer again? Why would an Imperial warrior care about meeting prey he had spared? "I patrol this sector every few days," Zektar said before he could stop himself. "The old library on 5th Street. I usually check it around noon." David smiled. A real smile this time. "I'll remember that." Then he was gone, moving quickly but quietly through the rubble and shadows, disappearing into the maze of broken buildings like smoke in wind. Zektar watched until he could no longer see or hear the human's movement. The patrol ships grew louder, closer. Zektar raised his rifle and fired 3 shots into an empty window. The plasma bolts left scorched marks on the wall. Evidence of a firefight. evidence of a human who fought back and escaped. When the ships landed, Commander Vashiti emerged with 2 other warriors. She was smaller than Zektar, but twice as cruel. Her reputation for brutality was known throughout the fleet. She looked at the scorch marks on the building and then at Zektar's weapon. "Report," she commanded. "Human male, armed with stolen Imperial weapon, engaged in firefight. Target escaped into the ruins before termination could be achieved." Vashiti's eyes narrowed. "You let prey escape?" The target was better trained than expected, possibly former military. He used the terrain effectively and had prepared multiple escape routes. It was all lies. But they were good lies, professional lies, the kind that sounded believable to someone who expected competence from her soldiers. "Disappointing," Vashiti said, "but not uncommon in urban terrain. The humans here are more resourceful than those on other worlds. Double your patrols. Find this one and make an example of him." "Yes, Commander." The ships lifted off again, disappearing into the gray sky to continue their rounds. Zektar was alone again in the empty street. But something had changed. The silence felt different now, less empty and more full of possibility. He thought about David Chen, the teacher, who had asked his name, the human who had seen him as a person instead of just a weapon. It had been so long since anyone had looked at him that way. So long since he had thought of himself as anything more than an instrument of the Empire's will. Back on his home world, before the wars and conquests, he had been different, younger, less broken. He had cared about things beyond duty and death. He had dreamed of exploring the galaxy, not to conquer it, but to understand it, to meet new species and learn from them. Those dreams felt like memories from someone else's life. The Empire had trained them out of him through years of conditioning and combat. They had made him into the perfect soldier, efficient, ruthless, unquestioning. But David's simple questions had cracked something open inside him, a door he thought had been welded shut forever. Behind that door were all the things he used to be before he became a killer. Zektar began walking toward his next patrol point, but his steps were slower now, less certain. For the first time in years, he found himself thinking about things other than his mission. He thought about David's smile, about the courage it took to stand still when death approached. About what it meant to choose mercy when violence was expected. The alien warrior had always believed that strength came from the ability to destroy. But maybe he had been wrong. Maybe real strength came from the ability to spare. To choose compassion when cruelty would be easier. These thoughts felt dangerous, revolutionary, the kind of thinking that could get a soldier executed for treason. But they also felt true in a way that years of imperial doctrine never had. As he walked through the ruins of humanity's city, Zektar wondered if he had spared David's life or if David had somehow saved his own. 3 days passed before Zektar returned to the library. He told himself it was just another patrol, just checking the area for human survivors like he always did. But his steps carried him there earlier than usual. His 4 eyes searched the shadows more carefully than needed for a simple sweep. The building had once been magnificent. Tall windows and stone columns, thousands of books on wooden shelves. Now half the roof was gone. Broken glass covered the floor. Rain had ruined most of the books. But something about the place still felt peaceful. Sacred, even. David was already there, sitting on a pile of undamaged books near what used to be the children's section. He looked up when Zektar entered. No fear in his eyes. Just quiet recognition. "You came," David said. "I patrol this area regularly," Zektar replied. but the formal words sounded hollow. They both knew why he was really there. David held up a water-stained book. I used to read this one to my students, Charlotte's Web, about friendship between different species. Seems appropriate now. Zektar had never heard of the story. Imperial soldiers were not taught about human literature. Art and culture were considered weaknesses, distractions from the business of conquest. Tell me about it, he said. The words surprised him. When had he started caring about human stories? David's face brightened. For a moment he looked like the teacher he used to be instead of a survivor hiding in ruins. It's about a pig named Wilbur and a spider named Charlotte. Everyone expects Charlotte to eat Wilbur because that's what spiders do to pigs, but instead she becomes his friend. She saves his life. The alien warrior shifted uncomfortably. The parallels were too obvious to ignore, a predator choosing not to harm its natural prey. Friendship forming where only death was expected. The spider dies at the end, David continued. But not before she teaches Wilbur that love is stronger than instinct, that we can choose to be better than what others expect us to be. Zektar sat down heavily on a fallen bookshelf. His massive frame dwarfed the human furniture. Your stories are strange. On my world, the strong devour the weak. That is the natural order. Maybe that's not the only way things can be, David said. Maybe there's room for something different. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through broken windows. The sound of distant aircraft reminded them both that this peaceful moment existed in the middle of a war zone. Why are you not afraid of me? Zektar asked eventually. David considered the question seriously. I was terrified when I first saw you. My heart was beating so fast I thought it would explode. But then I realized something. Fear wouldn't change. What happened? Either you would kill me or you wouldn't. My terror wouldn't affect that outcome. So you chose courage instead? I chose to see you as more than just a weapon. I chose to believe that somewhere inside all that armor and training was someone who could make a different choice. Zektar looked at his hands. 4-fingered appendages designed for gripping weapons and crushing enemies. When had they last touched? Something gently? When had they created instead of destroyed? I have killed so many, he whispered. Thousands across dozens of worlds. They all had names like you do, lives like you do, dreams like you do. I know, David said simply, but you're here now, talking instead of killing. That has to count for something. Does it? Can thousands of deaths be balanced by one moment of mercy? David moved closer. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that Zektar could see the sincerity in his eyes. I don't know. But I think asking the question is a start. Most killers never wonder about the weight of their actions. The alien warrior thought about his fellow soldiers, Vashati and the others. Did they ever lie awake at night remembering the faces of those they had killed? Did they ever question their orders or wonder if there might be another way? The Empire teaches us that conscience is weakness, Zektar said, that doubt leads to defeat. They train it out of us through pain and repetition until all that remains is the mission. But they didn't get all of it, David observed. Something inside you survived their training. Something that made you stop when you could have fired. Zektar wanted to deny it, wanted to claim that sparing David had been a momentary lapse, a malfunction in his conditioning that would not happen again. But that would be another lie. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. He was changing. Each day since their first meeting, he had found it harder to follow his orders without question. When he saw human civilians fleeing, he found excuses to let them escape. When his fellow soldiers spoke of their kills with pride, he felt sick instead of envious. "What is happening to me?" he asked. "You're remembering how to be yourself instead of just a tool someone else uses." David pulled another book from the pile. This one was less damaged. A collection of poetry by someone named Maya Angelou. He opened it to a random page and read aloud. "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." The words hit Zektar like physical blows. How many untold stories had he silenced forever? How many voices had he stolen from the universe? "I carry their stories now," he said, quietly. "All the ones I killed. They live in my memory even though their bodies are gone." "Then honor them," David replied. "Make sure their deaths weren't meaningless. Use what you learned from taking their lives to save others." It was a radical idea, using his position as an imperial soldier not to serve the empire, but to subvert it, finding ways to protect the innocent while maintaining his cover, walking the razor's edge between duty and conscience. "It would be dangerous," Zektar said. "If they discovered what I was doing, they would execute you. I know. But isn't living as someone else's weapon a kind of death, too?" The question hung in the air between them. Outside, the sounds of the occupied city continued. Patrol ships, marching soldiers, the machinery of conquest grinding forward as it had, on 100 worlds before Earth. But here in this ruined library, something different was growing. Not resistance in the traditional sense. Not a plan to overthrow the empire through force. Something quieter but potentially more powerful. The seed of redemption. Zektar stood up slowly. His patrol time was almost over. Soon he would have to return to base and pretend to be the loyal soldier they expected him to be. But something fundamental had shifted. "I will try," he said. "I cannot promise to save everyone, but I will try to save some." David smiled. "That's all anyone can do. Save who you can. Protect who you can. Choose mercy when the moment allows." The alien warrior nodded. He turned to leave but stopped at the doorway. "David? Yes? Thank you. For seeing me as more than just a monster. Thank you for proving me right." Zektar left the library with careful steps. Behind him, David remained among the books, reading stories of hope and friendship to an empty room, planning his own small acts of resistance in a world gone mad. Neither of them knew it yet, but their unlikely friendship would spark something larger. Other Imperial soldiers would begin to question their orders. Other humans would find the courage to reach out instead of just running away. Revolution sometimes starts with armies and weapons, but sometimes it starts with two unlikely friends sitting in a library, choosing to see each other as people instead of enemies. The Empire had conquered Earth's military in 3 days, but it would take much longer to conquer the human spirit. And now they had an ally inside their own ranks, a killer learning to save instead of destroy. The real war was just beginning. 2 weeks later, Zektar faced his first real test. Commander Vashiti had received intelligence about a human hideout in the old subway tunnels. 15 survivors, including 3 children. The order was simple: eliminate them all. Zektar stood, with 5 other warriors at the tunnel entrance. His squad mates checked their weapons with practiced efficiency. To them, this was routine. Another extermination mission among dozens they had completed since the invasion. "Remember," Vashti said, her voice cold as winter metal, "no survivors. The humans must learn that hiding from us is pointless. Fear is our greatest weapon. The squad descended into darkness. Their helmet lights cut through shadows like knives. Zektar's heart pounded in his chest. For years he had followed such orders without question. Now every step felt like walking toward a cliff. They found the humans huddled in an old maintenance room. Men and women who had once lived normal lives. Now they were thin and dirty, wearing torn clothes and carrying broken weapons. 3 small faces peered out from behind their parents. Children who should have been playing and learning. Instead, they lived like frightened animals in the dark. "Weapons ready!" ordered Grathuk, the squad leader. His rifle hummed to life. The others followed suit. 15 humans faced 6 alien warriors in a concrete tomb. There would be no escape this time. Zektar raised his weapon but did not activate it. His mind raced. How could he save them without exposing himself? How could he choose mercy without signing his own death warrant? The humans pressed together in terror. One woman held a baby against her chest. The child couldn't be more than 6 months old. Its tiny fist grabbed at empty air while death surrounded it. "Execute!" Grathuk commanded. 5 weapons discharged at once. Plasma bolts lit up the chamber like lightning. But in that same instant, Zektar made his choice. Instead of firing at the humans, he aimed at the ceiling. His shot brought down a section of concrete and rebar. Debris crashed between the squad. And their targets. "Cave in!" someone shouted. "The structure is unstable!" In the chaos and dust, Zektar moved. He grabbed the woman with the baby and pushed her toward a drainage pipe he had spotted earlier. "Go!" he whispered in broken English. "Take the others. That pipe leads to the surface 3 blocks north." The woman stared at him in shock. An alien warrior was saving her life. Saving her child's life. It made no sense, but she didn't waste time questioning it. She gathered the other survivors, and they disappeared into the darkness. When the dust settled, Grathuk was furious. They escaped! How did they know about the drainage system? "Human intelligence gathering," Zektar suggested. "They must have prepared multiple escape routes." It was believable. The humans had proven more resourceful than expected throughout the occupation. Grathuk cursed but accepted the explanation. 15 more humans lived because one alien had chosen to save rather than slaughter. That night, Zektar met David at the library as usual. But this time, he brought someone with him. A small figure in a torn dress who stayed close to his massive frame. "This is Sarah," David said, recognizing the child immediately. "Her parents were in the group you saved today." The little girl looked up at Zektar with wide eyes. No fear, just curiosity. She had been too young to understand what had happened in the tunnel. To her, this alien was just another person. "Hello," she said in a tiny voice. Zektar knelt down slowly. His 4 arms made careful movements so as not to frighten her. "Hello, Sarah," she giggled at his deep voice. Then, without warning, she reached out and touched one of his hands. Her tiny fingers traced the ridges and scars on his purple skin. "You're different," she observed matter-of-factly. "Yes," Zektar agreed. "I am very different from you." "That's okay. My teacher says different is good. Different means there's more to learn about." David smiled sadly. Her teacher was killed in the first week of the invasion, but she remembers the lessons. The child's innocent acceptance hit Zektar harder than any weapon could. Here was someone too young to know she should. Hate him, too pure to understand that his kind had destroyed her world. She saw only a new friend who looked unusual. "Sarah," David said gently, Zektar helped your parents today. He made sure they could get away safely. The girl's face lit up. Thank you. She hugged his massive hand with both her tiny arms. Mama said a big purple person helped us. I didn't know purple people could be nice. Zektar felt something break inside his chest. Not break from damage, but break free, like ice melting after a long winter. This child's simple gratitude was worth more than all the medals and commendations the Empire had ever given him. I am not always nice, he admitted honestly. I have done bad things. Sarah considered this seriously. Mama says everyone does bad things sometimes, but we can say sorry and try to do better. The alien warrior looked at David over the child's head. Is it that simple? Sometimes, David replied. Children see the world more clearly than adults. We complicate things that don't need to be complicated. They spent the next hour together. Sarah asked endless questions about Zektar's home world and his 4 arms and why his eyes were different colors. He answered each one patiently. It had been years since anyone had been curious about him as a person rather than afraid of him as a killer. When it was time to go, Sarah hugged his hand again. Will I see you again, Mr. Zektar? I hope so, he said. And he meant it. After David and Sarah left, Zektar remained in the library alone. The child's words echoed in his mind. Everyone does bad things sometimes, but we can say sorry and try to do better. Could it really be that simple? Could years of slaughter be balanced by choosing to save lives now? Could a monster become something else through small acts of kindness? He thought about the woman with the baby, the relief in her eyes when she realized her child would live, the gratitude of 15 people who had expected to die but found mercy instead. It felt better than any victory the Empire had ever given him, but it was also dangerous. Each act of mercy put him at greater risk. Sooner or later, someone would notice his pattern of failures. Someone would ask why human survivors kept escaping from his missions. That night, Zektar made a decision that would change everything. He activated his personal communicator and sent a coded message to an Imperial frequency, but not to his commanders. Instead, he reached out to other soldiers in his unit, warriors who might also be having doubts, fighters who might be ready to choose a different path. The message was simple. The humans have a saying, everyone does bad things sometimes, but we can say sorry and try to do better. If you want to do better, meet me in the old library on 5th Street tomorrow at midnight. He sent it to 12 warriors. He expected maybe 1 or 2 to show up, maybe none at all. Imperial conditioning was strong. The risk of treason charges was real. But late the next night, 7 alien soldiers stood in the ruins of the library. 7 killers who had grown tired of killing, 7 weapons of the Empire who wanted to become something more. Zektar looked at each face in turn. Some he knew well. Others were barely acquaintances, but they all shared the same expression. The same mixture of fear and hope and desperate need for redemption. We are all here for the same reason, he said quietly. We remember who we used to be before the Empire made us into what we are now. We want to find our way back to being people instead of just weapons. One by one, they nodded. One by one, they chose to join his quiet rebellion. Not against the Empire's military might, which would be suicide, but against its moral authority over their souls. The resistance had found its most unlikely allies, not in human fighters or alien sympathizers, but in the warriors of the Empire itself. Soldiers, who remembered that they were people first and weapons second. The revolution was spreading. one conscience at a time. 6 months after their first meeting, the secret group had grown to 30 warriors. They called themselves the Forgotten, because they had remembered what the Empire wanted them to forget, that they were people with choices, not just tools for destruction. Zektar stood before them in the underground chamber they used for meetings. It had once been a human subway station. Now it served as headquarters for the strangest rebellion in galactic history. Alien soldiers planning to save the people they were supposed to kill. Commander Vashiti is becoming suspicious, he reported. Human survival rates in our sectors are too high. She has ordered a full investigation. The gathered warriors shifted uncomfortably. They all knew what an Imperial investigation meant. Interrogation under torture, memory probes. Anyone found guilty of treason would face public execution. Perhaps we should stop, suggested Kraleth, one of the newer members. We have saved many lives already. Is it worth dying for? How many? Asked another voice. It was David, who had become an unofficial advisor to the group. How many have we saved? Zektar had kept careful count. 3,417 humans, plus 15 members of other conquered species who were being held as slaves. The number hung in the air like a prayer. Over 3,000 lives preserved, families kept together, children who would grow up free instead of in chains. It was more than any traditional resistance cell had accomplished. Each one of those people will have children, David continued. Those children will have children. In 100 years, our actions here will have preserved tens of thousands of lives, maybe hundreds of thousands. If we live that long, Kraleth muttered. Even if we don't, Zektar said firmly, we will have done something that matters. We will have chosen to be more than what the Empire made us. The group voted, not in the Imperial style with rank determining outcome, but as equals. Each warrior had one voice. Each choice carried equal weight. In the end, they decided to continue their work despite the risks. But Vashti was closing in. 3 days later, she called Zektar to her office. The chamber was decorated with trophies from conquered worlds, skulls and weapons and art objects torn from the hands of their dead creators. Your performance has been disappointing, she said without preamble. Your kill rate is down 60% from last year. Human escape rates in your sector are the highest in the occupation force. Zektar kept his face neutral. The humans have adapted their tactics. They are more cautious now. Better hidden. Or you have gone soft. The accusation hit like a physical blow. In Imperial culture, being called soft was nearly as bad as being called traitor. It suggested weakness, corruption, a failure of duty that demanded correction. I have served the Empire faithfully for 12 years, Zektar replied. My loyalty is beyond question. Vashti studied him with cold eyes. Is it? Tomorrow you will lead a raid on a human school. Intelligence reports 150 children and 20 adults hiding in the basement. I want them all dead by sunset. Every single one. The order was a test. Vashti knew it and Zektar knew it. Kill the children and prove his loyalty. Spare them and confirm her suspicions. Either way, the innocents would die. If not by his hand, then by someone else's. That night, Zektar met with the Forgotten One last time. The warehouse fell silent as he explained the situation. 170 lives hung in the balance. Mostly children who had done nothing wrong except be born human. We could evacuate them, suggested Morden, another squad leader. "Get them out before the raid begins." "Vashti has surveillance drones watching the area," Zektar replied. "Any unusual movement will be detected. The children would be killed, anyway, and our organization would be exposed." The room fell quiet. They had faced impossible choices before, but never one this stark. Save the children and doom themselves, or let innocents die to preserve their ability to save others later. "There is another option," David said quietly. He had been sitting in the corner, listening. Now all eyes turned to him. "You could tell the truth." "What?" several warriors asked at once. David stood up slowly. "Go to the raid as ordered, but when you arrive, tell your fellow soldiers the truth. Tell them what you've learned about mercy and choice. Ask them to join you instead of following orders." "They would kill us immediately," Kraleth protested. "Maybe. Or maybe some of them are ready to change too." "How many soldiers in that raid force, Zektar?" 25 warriors plus support staff." "And how many of us are there?" 30. David nodded. "Better odds than I expected. And what if half? The raid force joins you. What if they refuse orders too?" It was madness. 50 Imperial soldiers openly defying orders would trigger a massive response, but it would also save 170 children. And it might inspire others to question their own obedience. "It would be the end," Zektar said. "Open rebellion. They would send the entire fleet to destroy us." "Yes," David agreed. "But you would go down as people who chose to protect children instead of slaughter them. Your deaths would mean something." The Forgotten debated through the night. Some wanted to evacuate the school despite the risks. Others preferred to maintain their cover and continue their secret work. But as dawn approached, a consensus emerged. They would tell the truth. The next morning, 25 Imperial warriors assembled for the raid. Zektar looked at each face. Some he knew well. Others were strangers. All were products of the same system that had created him. Weapons shaped by pain and discipline and endless repetition. But weapons could choose to become something else. The school was a simple brick building that had once housed 800 students. Now it sheltered 150 frightened children in its basement. They had been hiding there for weeks, surviving on scraps and hope. Zektar's team surrounded the building, standard formation, weapons ready. Everything proceeded according to protocol until the moment they reached the basement door. Then Zektar stopped. "Warriors of the Empire," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I have something to tell you." The squad froze. This was not part of the plan. Squad leaders did not make speeches during operations. Behind this door are 150 children. Human children who have done nothing wrong. They are afraid. They are hungry. They are hiding from us because they know we have come to kill them. Several warriors raised their weapons, not at the door, but at Zektar. Mutiny was punishable by immediate execution. "I have killed thousands," he continued, ignoring the guns pointed at him. "I have followed orders without question. For 12 years I have been the perfect Imperial soldier, and I am tired of it." The words rang through the basement corridor, simple words that carried the weight of revolution. "I am tired of being a weapon someone else uses. I am tired of murdering innocents and calling it duty. I am tired of pretending that conquest is noble and slaughter is righteous." Some of the warriors looked confused, others angry, but a few nodded slowly. Recognition flickered in their eyes. "The Empire tells us we are warriors. But warriors fight other warriors. What we do here is not war. It is extermination. We are not soldiers. We are executioners. One of the younger warriors lowered his weapon, then another. A crack appeared in the wall of Imperial discipline. "I am going to open this door," Zektar announced. "I am going to tell those children they are safe. I am going to choose mercy over orders for the first time in my life. Any warrior who wants to join me is welcome. Any who want to stop me can try." He turned and placed his hand on the door controls. Behind him, he heard the distinctive sound of weapons powering down. One by one, a cascade of choices rippling through the squad. When he looked back, 17 warriors stood with him. Only 8 remained loyal to their orders. 17 soldiers had chosen conscience over command in a single moment of truth. The basement door opened. 150 children looked up at the alien warriors who had come to kill them. But instead of death, they found protection. Instead of slaughter, they found mercy. And in a small brick school on a conquered world, the real revolution finally began. Not with armies or weapons or grand strategies, but with the simple decision to save children instead of killing them. To choose love over hate. To remember that being strong meant protecting the weak, not destroying them. The empire would fall eventually, not from external attack, but from internal change, soldier by soldier, choice by choice, heart by heart. The forgotten had become the remembered, and they would never forget again.